how you can make different sounds with things around the house? When authors are trying to make sounds, they can't make a recording and stick that sound recording in the book, like I am making sound recordings with these bottles that I'm blowing into. Instead, they need to try and make the same sound using only the letters of the alphabet that they have. When they do that, it's called onomatopoeia. Onomatopoeia is when authors use words that sound like the sounds that they're trying to communicate to you. So, for example, pop. Pop sounds like a popping sound, right? Pop. Or another one might be creak. Creak sounds like a creaking door. Onomatopoeia is something that you can include in your writing, and it's something that I found in this next section that I was reading in a series of unfortunate events, Book 1, The Bad Beginning. So, let's give it a read, and as you're listening, I want you to see, or hear, how the author uses onomatopoeia to improve the storytelling. Let's give it a listen. Eventually, using enough of the ugly clothing, Violet had a rope that was, she hoped, just over 30 feet long. She tied one end of it to the metal spider and looked at her handiwork. What she had made was called a grappling hook, which is something used for climbing up the sides of buildings, usually for a nefarious purpose. Using the metal end to hook onto something at the top of the tower, and the rope to aid her climb, Violet hoped to reach the top of the tower, untie Sunny's cage, and climb back down. This was, of course, a very risky plan, both because it was dangerous, and because she had made the grappling hook herself, instead of purchasing it at a store that sold such things. But a grappling hook was all Violet could think of to make without a proper inventing laboratory, and time was running short. She hadn't told Klaus about her plan, because she didn't want to give him false hope, so, without waking him, she gathered up her grappling hook and tiptoed out of the room. Once outside, Violet realized her plan was even more difficult than she had thought. The night was quiet, which would mean she would have to make practically no noise at all. The night also had a breeze, and when she pictured herself swinging in the breeze, clinging to a rope made of ugly clothing, she almost gave up entirely. And the night was dark, so it was hard to see where she could toss the grappling hook and have the metal arms hook onto something. But, standing there, shivering in her nightgown, Violet knew she had to try. Using her right hand, she threw the grappling hook as high and hard as she could, and waited to see if it would catch onto something. Clang! The hook made a loud noise as it hit the tower, but it didn't stick to anything, and came crashing back down. Her heart pounding, Violet stood stock still, wondering if Count Olaf or one of his accomplices would come and investigate. But nobody arrived after a few minutes, and Violet, swinging the hook over her head like a lasso, tried again. Clang! Clang! The grappling hook hit the tower twice as it bounced back down to the ground. Violet waited again, listening for footsteps. But all she heard was her own terrified pulse. She decided to try one more time. Clang! The grappling hook hit the tower and fell down again, hitting Violet hard in the shoulder. One of the arms tore her nightgown and cut through her skin. Biting down hard on her hand to keep from crying out in pain, Violet felt the place in her shoulder where she had been struck, and it was wet with blood. Her arm throbbed in pain. At this point in the proceedings, if I were Violet, I would have given up. But just as she was about to turn around and go inside the house, she pictured how scared Sunny must be, and ignoring the pain in her shoulder, Violet used her right hand to throw the hook again. Clang! The usual clang sound stopped halfway through, and Violet saw in the dim light of the moon that the hook wasn't falling. Nervously, she gave the rope a good yank, and it stayed put. The grappling hook had worked. Did you notice what it was? The onomatopoeia word in this case was clang. And he used it several times, and then at the very end, the clang wasn't a full clang, and because it wasn't a full clang, you could tell that the grappling hook hit what it was supposed to hit. So that's how he used it to drive the story forwards. Now, what do I want you to do in your 30 minutes of reading? Well, I fully understand that the book that you are reading might not have an onomatopoeia in it in the section that you're reading. So what I want you to do is, I want you to give me some feedback about an onomatopoeia that you could add to the story if you were the author. Find something that makes a sound or something that could make a sound in the section that you're reading, and then write what onomatopoeia you would add and explain why it makes sense in the section that you're reading. Happy reading, and I'm looking forward to hearing what you find.